Can you see me? Good evening, everybody. This is Ted Williams from the Rittenhouse Astronomical Society. I'd like to welcome you to our October meeting. For those of you who are tuning in on our YouTube channel, we're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're probably the oldest astronomy club in the country at this point, and we do a monthly event. The part that you're going to see here tonight on YouTube is our guest speakers. And what we do is after that, we cut the YouTube feed and we continue on with our meeting. So I'd like to welcome anybody who's looking in from around the globe on our YouTube channel. Tonight's kind of a special night for us because we have two people who I've actually worked with both of them. Our main guest speaker is going to be Dr. Lydell Nunn. And Lydell, as the first time I bumped into him, was right here at Ryan Observatory. Lydell has actually been involved with us here, and he's on our volunteer staff here. So some of you might know him, and he's also tuned into a couple of our astroQuora forums. Also with us tonight is a previous guest speaker. It's Rupesh Varghese. And Rupesh and I have actually been together a couple times up at a neat dark sky site where we all go to called Cherry Springs. I've actually watched Ru in action, taking some of the photos up there. And I've asked him to join us because he might be more astute at some of the questions to ask Lydell about how some of these photos come about. But tonight's a night to congratulate Dr. Nunn. It's rare to get your picture in Sky and Telescope magazine. And for those of you who don't know about astronomy, that's probably like the Bible of astronomers. It's probably the best known magazine out there that people use. So on with us tonight is Lydell and Rupesh. I'd like to turn it over to them for a bit. Lydell is going to take over. You have to unmute yourself, Lydell. And Ru, if you'd unmute yourself also. And if you'd like, Ru, I'll let Lydell start. Ru is here to ask a few questions along the way too about how some of the techniques were done. Gentlemen, welcome here tonight.
Hey, Lydell, how are you?
I'm doing well, Rupesh. How about yourself?
Doing well. You know, yeah, your pictures, they're amazing. When I saw your picture got published, I was instantly happy and then jealous back to back, you know? And I was like, man, I need to get one of my pictures published. How did Lydell do this? And, you know, instead of asking you, I went to Ted and I'm like, hey, Ted, how did Lydell get his image published? And Ted was like, you know, you should ask him and maybe we should talk about this.
And I said, let's do it live. So
yeah, and that's what we're up to. So Lydell, you know, you and I have known each other for a short time, but you know, we're both astrophotographers, astronomers, and you know, we both have some great images, and you know, yours got published, and just want to know about your journey. Just want to know how you got started and what your path was, and what took you to astrophotography, and then you know, getting published, you know, and then on the way, I guess we can talk about some questions if anyone has any, or if I think about anything, we can talk about different techniques and different imaging processes and stuff like that.
Thank you, Rupesh, and thank you, Ted. If I may share my screen, Ted, I actually have a PowerPoint presentation that I put together that will hopefully answer some of the questions that Rupesh has asked so far, and hopefully would trigger some additional ones.
And Ted, just so you know, you're on mute.
Yeah, and I thought I could make you. You're co-host now, Lydell.
Okay, you're a co-host, Lydell. Go ahead and take it away.
Okay.
There's the answer.
Again, Ted.
There's the answer, Ru. It's the road. That's a good title.
So my name is Nunn, and this is my PowerPoint presentation on the road to Sky and Telescope. This is my astrophotography journey. And it's been a long road to relatively newcomer in astrophotography to published a couple times. This is my first astrophotography rig, and it is a Nexstar SE. It's a 6-inch Celestron telescope. And after looking through the eyepiece at the moon and Jupiter and Saturn, I decided what I really wanted to do is share images of the things that I was seeing in space with family and friends. And so I added my DSLR telescope, my camera to it, and tried to take some pictures. So in fall of 2015, this was my first moonshot. It's a single exposure image here. And astrophotography is kind of hard. So I decided I wanted to point the camera at Jupiter. And on the left is a single shot exposure of Jupiter and the 4 Galilean moons. Honestly, you're not seeing a whole lot of data there. It's just completely white out. There's no features or details in it. Very much overexposed. On the right side, you will see a stacked image of Jupiter. More detail, you can see some cloud cover, but not very good. This is a stacked composite image. It's also in black and white. That was not my intention. I hoped to make a color image, but to be frank, I didn't know what I was doing. So I decided what I really wanted to do is deep sky objects. And for deep sky objects, you need a different type of setup. You need a German equatorial mount. And I opted for a refracting telescope to get me there. So this was my first imaging rig. This is Rex. And astrophotography is a very, very fickle hobby, and one that required me to a lot of missteps. And one of the things I had a problem with was just connecting my gear to my laptop and getting things functioning. And so in the spring of 2016, out of total frustration, I reached out on one of the blogs, and this gentleman, Terry, who's become a great friend to me, says, listen, I'm going to be camping about an hour away from you. Why don't you come, bring your equipment? I'll show you how it works. And I did that. So I get there and Terry walks me through setting up my scope in the spring of 2016. That summer, I still had not successfully captured anything. And Terry, being the gracious guy that he is, says, why don't you just come to my house and we'll capture some images together. So that's what I did. And then I got my first deep sky image. So this is the fall of 2016. This is the Messier 31, the Andromeda Galaxy. And this is about an hour's worth of exposure. And after I got back from Terry's house, I processed this image and said, I'm on my way. I'm going to be an astrophotographer. And then reality hit. And so this is my first effort at Leo triplet. Very poor image. Looking at it now, it's definitely better than I gave it credit for at the time. But there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of noise. The stars are completely blown out. Here's
when you say blown out, Lydell, do you mean just too big or not focused?
No, there's no color at all in these stars. If you look at them, they've been completely washed out. The stars were so bright that your pixels are basically light buckets. And where these stars were, the light buckets just overflow, and then you're left with no detail. So these are basically just holes in the image. They're not actual images of stars. And you'll see the difference later on. Here is another attempt at a deep sky object. This is the Horsehead Nebula. A lot of grain and noise in the image. Some of the stars in the corner are oval shaped, and there's a lot of dark spots in the brighter stars. The Fireworks Galaxy. Noise looks not terrible here, but it's just not the quality of work I was hoping to do when I got started in this hobby. And I struggled a good bit. And then Terry invited me to the Northeast Astro Imaging Conference in 2018, and they're held in April of every year. I highly recommend anybody who's interested in doing astrophotography to go to NEASC. You will save yourself a lot of time and money by learning and not buying equipment that won't help you meet your needs. And so at the conference, I hung out with Terry and another good friend, Dr. Steve Maslin, and the two of them introduced me to some other phenomenal imagers. Dr. Ron Breacher, here's Steve Maslin. Steve actually has naming rights on one of our deep sky objects. He named the Statue of Liberty Nebula. My buddy Terry again. Mark Hansen is a two-time Astrophotographer of the Year winner. Mrs. Christine and Warren Keller. Warren wrote the book Inside Pixis Site. It's pretty much the Bible for anybody who wants to learn Pixis Site. There's actually a copy of it on the table here. I brought it for him to sign for me. Warren and Ron, along with the third gentleman, Pete Prue, they host the Masters of Pixis Site series, and they also do private lessons for people who want to learn how to process their image through Pixis Site. And I hung out with these guys all weekend, and at the Astro Imaging Conference, these guys were like the Rolling Stones. I felt like a roadie all weekend hanging out with them, but it was really cool. And I learned that I really did want to be an astrophotographer and be good at it. So I did some upgrading to my rig. I went from the DSLR camera to a monochrome, and I got a new guide scope, a moonlight focuser rotator. Probably the biggest upgrade I made was this dolly at the bottom. It typically took me about 90 minutes to set up my rig every night. I actually got frostbite one year, which is a big deterrent for imaging in the cold conditions. But with this dolly, I was able to wheel it out keep it set up, wheel it out when I wanted to use it, and then put it in the garage. I set up in about 5-10 minutes and I'm ready to image. And it really helped. It's an up close of Rex. And because Rex became a permanent rig for me, I decided to invest in a smaller portable rig so that I could travel to places like Cherry Springs State Park to do some imaging and not have to break it down. And these are Ruby and Rex. Ruby was named after my grandmother, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. Here they are, hanging out in the yard.
What type of scope are they? Like
they're both refractors. Rex is a 115 millimeter Orion triplet, and Ruby is an APO triplet refractor, 85 millimeter.
I was going to say, I recognize Ruby because I have that scope. Excellent scope.
It's a great telescope.
So Lydell, real quick, what made you pick these specific telescopes? What made you pick? I know you had the Nexstar, but what made you want to get these ones?
So honestly, the first astrophotography book that I bought, this is almost identical to the setup. And I'm at this point, I'm just learning from others who had done it before me. So later on, I think I had a chance to process my way through what I really wanted. I'll show you that in a couple of minutes here, Rupesh.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So here are my first captures with the new setup. This is the Messier 42. This is the Orion Nebula. A couple of things I want to point out here. This was my first successful deep sky imaging. It is in Hubble Palace. So these are narrow band filters. One problem I had here, if you look at the arrows, there are some halos. It was poor quality O3 filter, and it allowed a lot of extraneous light to come in and make these halos. That was not flagrant. I actually tried to hide them by putting in those crosshairs in post-production. But one thing that imagers of this target, especially beginners, struggle with is they tend to blow out this region inside the box, which is the trapezium. It's very bright, and you're constantly trying to balance out the trapezium with the faint nebulosity around the target. And so as a newbie, being able to get that detail in the core and maintain it I was happy with that. This image is the Eastern Veil Nebula. And again, this is shot in Hubble palette. Here I have my new set of filters. So you notice that the stars actually look like stars. They have some color in them, the larger ones. And this was a what I considered a very successful image. This was one of the first images that I actually hung up in my office.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Lydell, what filter brands are you using and what's the bandwidth?
They were 5 nanometers and they were astronomics. Now, this picture was actually captured with the old set of filters. You know that because you'll see some of the haloing around some of the larger stars. Fortunately, by the time I shot this one, I was able to mask them a little bit better in my processing. At this stage of the game, I was still using Photoshop. And to be frank, I know some imagers who do an excellent job with Photoshop. I've always had a struggle with just protocols and having a process in Photoshop. But I do know some imagers that use it to exceptional levels. But this was a great image for me personally. And the folks at Sky and Telescope thought it was a pretty decent image too. This was my first image to get published. This is the June 2021 issue of Sky and Telescope magazine. So in 2019, I started a master's degree program and I didn't get an opportunity to image much. At the end of the year, through some negotiations with my wife, she said, you know what, go ahead and you can build your observatory in the backyard. And so here is the frame that went up for the deck that supports the observatory and the pier support. And the pier support is 18 inches by 18 inches by 48. It's about 1,200 pounds of concrete. So it's pretty stable. I added some screen mesh under the deck boards to just keep pests out. And then here's the deck boards. Electricity is installed and the pier got mounted here. And then here's the observatory. The observatory is composed of PVC and it's made by a company called Next Dome out of Vancouver, Canada. And this is the Wallingford Mac Observatory. Wallingford is the name of my development and the people in my community were very supportive. In fact, the gentleman whose house you see in the background was the president of the HOA board and he signed off on allowing me to build the observatory. And the MAK stands for my wife and 2 sons. And this sign was made for me by my buddy Terry, who's probably the most talented guy I know. He CNC routed this 3D sign for the observatory and I hung it and display it proudly.
Neat.
That's gorgeous.
So
when it's time for me to build an observatory, I need you to help negotiate with my wife as well.
I got you.
So I gotta buy a house first, but I might need to help at that point.
So to answer one of Rupesh's earlier questions, you know, I was copying other people when I built my first 2 rigs. And that's one of the mistakes that I probably, if I had to do over, I would have done differently. You know, the sky conditions for my area are not great. In fact, we're on 2 consecutive weeks of cloud cover. So I just don't get a lot of opportunities to image. And one of the reasons I wanted the observatory is I wanted to automate it so that I could capture images in one night. And so I decided to eliminate Rex for a little while. And I bought this Roe Ackerman Smith astrograph scope, which images at f2, which is really fast. I could capture 18 hours worth of data from my previous telescope in about 6 hours with this setup. I also went to a 1-shot color camera. And so I can get, you know, on a good dark night in the wintertime, I can get about 6 to 8 hours on a target if it's available to me in the sky. The box in the front here is a Prima Luce Lab Eagle 3S. Essentially, it's a computer, it's a laptop computer without a monitor. And I use my iPad or my iPhone to remotely log into that. In fact, one of the images I'm going to show you here in just a few minutes, I started capturing data for this while I was sitting at a restaurant in Kansas City, Missouri. And I also changed to the 1-shot color, which is a ZWO ASI 2600. here. Here is the observatory in action. I sent the slew command to go to the target I was imaging that night. And it's moving to the target.
Great job, Lydell.
When it gets to the target, it'll do a plate solve, confirm that it's where it needs to be, and it will start the imaging process. So here are my first images from Wallingford Mac. This is the Pinwheel Galaxy, SER 101. Here's the Whirlpool Galaxy. These were both taken in the spring of this year. This is the Trifid and the Lagoon Nebulae. Very low in the sky for me. They're about 20 degrees in the sky. And so I had to shoot a lot of short exposures. Otherwise, I risk being washed out by the city lights in the background and a lot of atmosphere. And now here is a revisit of Andromeda. This was my first successful image. And this is a version of it I captured this past September. And side by side, you see there's a lot more detail. In fairness, the image on the left is only about an hour. The image on the right is about 12 hours worth of data. The Leo triplet. Honestly, after I shot this image, I didn't shoot another galaxy for about 3 years. But here's the updated version. A lot more detail, more neutral background, and you see a lot of color in the stars.
Right.
Here's the two of them side by side. And this image was my second one to be published in Sky and Telescope. This was July 2021. And I'll briefly go. Yes.
Have you thought about taking your first image of the triplet and running that through Pixis Site?
You know, so a lot of problems that I had with those first images, I don't have any of the calibration frames any longer. And one of the things you learn when you start imaging is managing how you store your data. And that was something that took me a little while to get the hang of. Today, I have a couple of external hard drives and I keep all of my calibration frames with the light frames of any target I'm imaging. So as I develop more skills and we get these periods where it's, you know, cloudy and overcast for weeks at a time, I can go back and process some of that data. Great question too, thank you, Al. I use 3 programs to image: a planetarium software, an auto guiding software, and my sequence control program. This is my planetarium software. It's Cartes de Seal. The arrows pointing to latitude, longitude, and altitude of the observatory. It's just basically the address of where I am. And then it gives the RA and declination of the target I'm imaging. And you see that target at the bullseye in the center of the screen. I'm at zenith. I was imaging the portion of the Veil Nebula in the Cygnus constellation. Here's my auto guiding software. There's a couple of crosshairs here, and those crosshairs are just tracking that star's movement, keeping my mount as closely approximated to the target as possible. And there's a couple of graphs here, and they are measuring, they're sending pulses and corrections to keep that star centered. And this little chart here is what I really focus on. And total declination, total RMS error in both pixels and arc seconds. And I'm running at about 0.07 pixels and about 0.47 arc seconds. So that was a good night of guiding for my setup. This is Sequence Generator Pro. This is the software that I use. It controls every function of the observatory. In the center here, you'll see the image of a 5-minute capture of the Veil Nebula. In the right quadrant, you'll see the Witch's Broom, and very faintly in the center of the image is Pickering's Triangle. The software looks intimidating, but it really is a teddy bear. Any of these tabs that you see, you can make it your own. You can use tabs, you can not use tabs. These were the tabs that I chose that were functional for me. This box here is the information that's being pulled over from Carts to Seal, the planetarium software. So it's giving my RAN deck. It's also telling me how many minutes I have left before the meridian flip. This is my manual frame and focus. I really only use that if I'm changing out filters. And this is the histogram of the image that we're looking at. On the top is the unstressed image, and then the bottom graph is the actual stretched image that you see. Here I have my environmental data and the scope centering, and here are my image statistics. And Ted, you asked about the stars. The information and the image statistics are what I rely upon to ensure that I don't overexpose stars anymore, which is something that was that happened quite regularly when I first got started. And
do some people shoot the stars separately and then put them back in the picture? Like,
typically, there are a lot of people who, when they process their image, they will remove the stars at the beginning, process the nebula, and then bring the stars back in. And yes, there are people that do that. You're capturing all the data at the same time, but they may process it independently. In the center of this image is one of the focus control routines. So we just went through an autofocus. This box is that my temperature control of the camera. Cooled cameras offer the benefit of eliminating heat, which is infrared light, which is another form of light that we want to avoid. It typically will put noise in the images. So by maintaining a temperature below a certain threshold of the ambient, you can eliminate a lot of that noise. This is the PhD graph. And again, you don't have built-in auto guiding functions, but you can pull those over so you can monitor those, your auto guiding all on this one software. This is the observatory control, and it's just telling me that the observatory is connected and paired with the mount. This is my focus routine. And this is the sequencing. And so this is telling us, hey, I'm shooting 50 exposures, and we've taken 11 of them so far, and we're 22% completed. We have 3 hours left. And that's all that.
wow. So I would like to know, what was the longest time you've ever spent on an image?
So I think the most time I've spent capturing an image, I have one image that was 18.5 hours worth of data. A funny thing about the Andromeda galaxy, when I reshot it, I said that was 12.5 images worth of data, but it was in 1 minute exposures. And there were about 750 of those. And each subframe, software doesn't really care how long you expose for. Each frame is about 50,000 kilobytes. So when you take 750 of those, it was about 40 gigabytes of data. And it took my computer about 19 hours to stack the image. I think I started it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it finished at about 10 o'clock the next morning.
Amazing.
Ed, one of the, it's an interesting question to ask what the longest image is. I think Lydell can attest to this. There's an idea of how much you want to do and how much reasonable time you get with clouds.
Right.
I've been trying to work on a 50-hour project, and I'm almost giving up now because I need to shoot some narrow, broadband data, but every time it's clear, it's when the moon is up. So sometimes you're limited by, sometimes you're limited, but I have 35 hours of data now, but I'm gonna stop at this point because you almost want to keep moving on at some point, because there's an idealistic idea of how much you can get, and then what the reality of where we live sets in.
Well, and to Rupesh's point, at some point, these targets are moving. We're making our way around the sun, and we lose constellations during good viewing hours, and so you get to a point where you're running out of time with this target.
Hey, Lydell.
Yes, Al.
I'm just thinking, my setup is fairly static. I don't, the camera and filters and everything are never changed. And I end up doing calibration masters maybe once every season or sometimes even every half year. Some people I know do it every time they take an image, but where are you in that spectrum?
The beauty of having a cooled camera is you can do your calibration frame libraries. And so for me, I probably shoot darks probably every 6 months. So I'll shoot them as we're approaching some of the warmer months. My camera has a hard time getting down to -20 below ambient in the warmer summer months. So I have to shoot a new set of -10 degree subs, darks. I no longer shoot bias frames. I'm using a CMOS camera, and they don't really work with it. They actually add a lot of noise. I shoot what are called dark flats or flat darks, depending on who you ask. And they're just dark frames that match my flat frames. And then my setup is pretty dust free. I go out there once a week and make sure to blow everything off. So I can probably get away with flat frames once a week.
You've got sealed tube OTAs then. Yeah.
Lydell, a question for you. What made you pick a dome instead of like a rolling roof observatory? Because that's something I kind of go back and forth. And I don't have a house yet even, but I have this imaginary observatories in my head. And, I've gone back and forth on pros and cons of roof versus dome. So can you walk through like what made you get the dome and how you pick the next dome versus a sky shed and etc.?
Honestly, I have a lot of responsibilities, and so it often limits my opportunities to image. At the time I was purchasing and building the observatory, I was also president of my son's little league, and so there were I also have responsibility as a husband to take my wife out to dinner every now and again. So I was missing opportunities to image. My primary motivation was automation. I wanted to be able to image from anywhere. And like I said, we were at a baseball game in Kansas City. We went out to dinner. I pulled out my iPhone. I have a camera in the backyard that I can observe the sky. I looked at the sky, it was clear. I said, I'm going to image, and 5 minutes on my phone, the observatory was open. And 5 minutes after that, I was taking 1 minute subs of the Andromeda Galaxy from Ruth's Chris in Kansas City, Missouri.
Sharp setup. Cool.
Amazing. Dream come true at some point.
Yeah. When you're ready, I'll come up and help you build it.
I'll be happy to do it. It's like I'm in a similar position as you, where I live in an apartment complex, so I can't leave anything set up out. So I have a local dark sky I go to, and I set up every time I can. And you're limited by the setup time and the breakdown time. And I work in retail, so sometimes I don't get out of work till like 8 or 9 o'clock. So an observatory I know would just completely change my workflow. But I'm not quite there yet with life. But it's amazing to see how we have it set up and how we have it going.
Rupesh, you need an observatory large enough to live in.
People always ask me what I would do if I ever hit the lottery, and for me, it would be building multiple observatories in my backyard, not buying expensive cars. I would buy a Corolla, but have all the nice telescopes.
Rue, would you do us a favor? You shared a picture of Andromeda with us recently also. So we saw Lydell's picture.
A beautiful image, Rupesh.
Would you
thank
share
you.
it with us?
Yeah, of course, I can share. Let me share my screen. Let me know when you see it. Do you see it?
Yeah, coming in. So yours looks a lot different than Lydell's does. And when you sent this, and what's kind of neat is when you know these guys, they'll actually send you pictures now and then. So every now and then I get a treat, and this pops up in my pocket. And we were passing this one around, and we were wondering, how did you get all the red detail to come out? How do you get all the bluish? Are you putting in things that aren't there, or are we seeing reality?
So it's a bit of both. Lydell said that he has the RAS with the one-shot color camera. And up until about 3 months ago, that's exactly how I was shooting with a different telescope, but I was using a one-shot color camera. So what that means is the camera can capture red, blue, and green all together. And you can put a filter inside it to isolate some things, but just think of a DSLR, but with a cooler attached to it and cooling the sensor and things like that. So recently I made the jump to a monochrome camera. So what that is, it's a black and white camera for all intents and purposes. And I got to put a red filter in front of it and take some frames, the blue filter in front of it, take some frames, the green filter in front of it, and take some frames. And ideally, you combine them all together and get an RGB image. So you typically do that for galaxies and reflection nebulae and star clusters because those are all just like visible light. Broadband, exactly. They're visible broadband light, right? Now, the red you see in here, it's part of the red things in Andromeda. But what I did is I put a hydrogen alpha filter in front of my camera and had it take about 2 hours of data. So hydrogen alpha, it's the most abundant material, element in space in the universe. So if you think about when we are in the Milky Way and you look at Orion Nebula or you look at the Pac-Man Nebula that Lydell just shared, those are nebulae that is in our own Milky Way. And here the red you see is the nebulae in Andromeda. So if we were in Andromeda and we were observing from Andromeda, this is what they would see. Now, I didn't add anything that wasn't there, but what I did is I was able to isolate the hydrogen alpha data. Hydrogen by nature is red, so I added that to the red channel, so it looks like I saturated the red a little bit more. But it's not stuff that's not there. It's stuff that we can't see with the visible eye. But with the camera, I was able to capture the data and make it more pronounced. Now, did I oversaturate it a little bit? I might have. I'm still learning processing. Lydell can tell you'll never stop learning techniques in Pixis Site. This was surprisingly challenging for me to process because Andromeda is so big and there's so many different parts to it. Sometimes it's easier to process the pillars of creation because there's only a couple of things to it. But this one, there was so much to do. There's like tiny star clusters. This little blue star cluster, that's NGC 206. That for me, I tried my best to get it to look as natural as possible. And that took a lot of time for me to figure out. So the red comes from hydrogen alpha. I took the time to isolate the hydrogen and put it in front of the red channel. And that's how we get it. Lydell, do you have any more to add to it? Like, did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, that's actually perfect. I was going to say this is an HA-LRGB image.
Yes.
When you look at the fireworks nebula, the fireworks galaxy, Ted, those firework explosions that you're seeing are all the star forming regions of the fireworks galaxy. And the same thing is happening here, where there are stars forming in these pockets of hydrogen alpha that are just blowing up and ionizing this hydrogen. And that's why you're seeing these pops of red.
Yeah. So these would be similar to like Orion nebulas in our
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So here's a real beginner question.
Yeah.
When I do my pictures of Andromeda, the core is so bright it blows everything out.
And that's the point of taking very short exposures.
These are
long because you will blow it out. It's extremely
These
bright.
are all this is 10 hours of data. They're all 60-second frames. And I took my Cherry Springs where it's really dark. So, 60 seconds was plenty of data for me to capture all the detail. And, I was fortunate enough to build a computer a couple of years ago that was meant for astrophotography processing. So the stacking of all this, it took me 2 hours. It took me 2 hours to stack everything, 2.5 hours. But I specifically built the computer I built it for gaming, ended up being a Netflix machine, but also now it's very handy for photography. But now that I do more of these, one of my friends has a computer that's got 28 cores. I told him to just take my data and stack it for me, and he got it done in like 25 minutes.
Oh, that's disgusting.
So there's more ways to spend money on astrophotography than just the telescopes, Ted. But to answer your question, the core, it's when I first got a process of the image, my core was a little blown out as well. I'm going to stop sharing. So let me actually see if I can show it. I have so many different versions.
So with the way Rupesh did this image,
so see this right here, Ted? When I first processed it, this is how I did it. And then I learned some extra techniques, and then I was able to make it look a little different.
We're still on the Galaxy.
Oh, hold on. I see what I did. Share screen. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was my first. This is the whole image. This is my first shot at processing it. I had a little bit of trouble getting the blues to pop out. I was doing some techniques I already knew, but then I revisited some tutorials that I actually did a Masters of Pixis Site class with Lydell. I revisited some of the videos and learned some more. But in here, you can see this is the same data, Ted. There's nothing different about this data than the one I showed earlier. But in this one, the core is blown out, even though it's the same data, but it's all in the processing and applying the right mass. And then you can see the difference where I was able to make it more defined. Again, it's the same data. It's not like I added more or took anything out. It's just that, there's multiple techniques. I feel like last year I would have been very happy with the other image. This year I wanted to push myself and get a little bit more. And, now I saw Lydell's picture. I'm a little jealous because he got a lot of blues in the outer edges, and I wasn't able to capture that, or I wasn't able to process it. It could be either my data or my processing skills, or a bit of both, Well,
it's funny you say that, Rupesh, because when I saw yours, I said, man, I gotta add some HA data to my image.
Yeah, there's always the grass is green on the other side, right?
It's not that it's a competition. It's just you see a way to make it better, and we all want each other to take great images, but we use that to inspire ourselves to go further.
Yeah, there's no jealousy in this, I might be jealous of how much. I'm jealous of your equipment, your dome and everything, but as far as the images go, we're all learning from each other. Like if I saw something in Lydell's picture, I would message him like, hey, how would you do this? I got a lot of people asking me how I got the hydrogen to pop like this, and there's a formula in Pixis Site that I shared with a lot of people already. I actually in my website I actually did a write-up about it, and I put the formulas in here. So if anyone wants to read it, it's right here. So I can just point to it, so I don't have to off top of my head remember it.
Is that pixel math?
A little bit of pixel math, yeah. A little bit of pixel math.
Yep.
And I isolated the HJ and then added it to the red channel. So
nicely done. It's a fantastic.
Yeah, this is starting to sound like Michelangelo and Leonardo. You learn from each other. That's the only way to say it, because this hobby has the most, people with the most diverse set of equipment who is all after the same goal of getting the best picture to their artistic liking, I think. Ideally everyone has a shared idea what something should look like, but I can make this purple if I wanted to, and if I liked it, it's my image, and to
Rupesh's point, I think we're all our own biggest critics. A great example was that image of the lagoon and Trifid nebulae. When I finished processing that image about 2 weeks ago, I looked at him like, this is crap. And then when I was putting this presentation together, I looked at it again and I said, that's not too bad. And I decided to use it for this presentation. So sometimes you need to look at things with fresh eyes to gain a little bit more appreciation.
You guys are your own worst critics, because any of those pictures, I would be tickled to death if I took any one of those.
I did the elephant trunk a few weeks ago, and then my version, my colors that I did, they'll share real quick.
Yeah, sure.
I haven't seen a lot of people with my version of colors, but that doesn't mean mine's wrong or right. So this is, I don't know if you can see it yet, Ted.
Yeah, it's there.
That's my
That's
elephant
great.
trunk.
It's beautiful.
Some people do it in all red, and some people do it in like a green. When I did this, I was like, this reminds me of a Macau, a gold and blue Macau, and I was like, I'm pretty happy with this. But someone might not like the way this looks because in their image they've done a slightly different version of it. Now with this one, it's where it's a broadband image, so it's all art at this point because narrowband image. So some of this is all art. Because these colors are whatever you tell
They're
Pixis
false
Site to
color
put.
images.
Yeah, false color
Right.
images. So that's why with galaxies and stuff, they're all real color, visible colors and broadband images. But yeah.
And for the record, this is a fantastic image, Rupesh.
Thank you.
It's outstanding. I've attempted the elephant trunk about 3 times, and every time I hate it.
It is a tough target for sure.
So Ru,
Yeah.
Could you submit this to Sky and Tell? How would you get this into Sky and Tell?
Yeah, Lydell, that was the whole point of the conversation. How do I submit this Sky and Tell? What do I do?
So I will tell you what I did. I hung out at NEASC and I met a lot of people.
Mhm.
And one of those people was one of the editors for the magazine, and he saw my Leo triplet that I shot in the spring. And he's also seen some of my earlier work. So he knew that I had improved a good bit. And he said, listen, your images, he reached out to me the day after I posted the triplet on Facebook. And he said, your images are getting really good. If you're ever interested in getting published, shoot me a couple and I'll see if if the editors are interested in publishing your work. And I said, great. I said, of course I'm interested. And I emailed him a couple of my images. And a couple of days later, he asked if I could send him some of the details. And I did. And about a week later, he said, hey, congrats, you're going to be in the June issue of Sky and Telescope magazine. And I said, wow, fantastic. Wow. I've arrived. And about 3 weeks later, he sent me another email. He said, hey, congratulations, your Leo triplet is going to be in the July issue of Sky and Telescope.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to email them like, hey, the subject's Lydell told me to email you.
What I would do is I would submit stuff.
Yeah.
I would submit stuff. I got lucky, and also you really should come to NEASC. I'm hoping.
I really will. I mean, it's obviously with COVID and everything like that.
Yes,
when everything's open up. Yeah, when everything's open up, like NEASC and then NEAF, those are, like our little pilgrimages for us as a hobby. And Cherry Springs is the other one. It's definitely in the plans for sure.
Wow. Good luck with this, Ru. Hope you make it into Sky and Tell also.
And I'll submit it. I'll see what happens. Can't hurt, right? Worst they'll say is no, Well, I submitted one for an APOD, Ted. I don't know if I told you. Did you hear? I submitted for an APOD. Right. And it didn't get the APOD, but they put it in the notable section. So it was in there. I won the consolation prize. So this is when I was in Florida. I saw a SpaceX launch. So I thought this was APOD worthy, and I sent it to the APOD. They were like,
which image won?
So that I can't remember. It was actually another launch image, but there was actually this section of it where the contrails from the booster returning.
Booster.
But he had a more focused in image. So it was a really good one. But I went on there, I got on their constellation page. They have a second APOD Instagram page, and that's what I got. And so I was pretty excited about that. I was pretty proud of that. So, if you don't submit it, nothing happens, right? So
congratulations. No, that's good. That's a start.
You really should submit pretty much everything. I know my buddy Steve says, I took a couple of pictures and Steve says, boy, you should submit that. And I'm like, no, it's not there yet. And then the next day, the same target gets published as an APOD. And I'm looking, I'm like, wow, that's not as good as mine. I should have submitted.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably submit the Andromeda and the elephant trunk to the Sky and Telescope and see what happens. Worst they say is no. Best case, it'll comes. I'll be. You can interview me next time, Lydell.
There we go.
Rupesh,
yeah,
and Lydell, both of you. I've come to believe that their astrophotography is a series of most important steps. You know, it's most important to get good data to begin with, but then after you get it, it becomes most important to, you know, have a good image reduction scenario. And then after you do that, it's most important in the post-processing to get the kind of image you're looking for. And perhaps most important after that would be liking what you've done. But I don't know if you agree with any of those. I think other steps are more important, but for me, that seems to have worked and kept me from going any further than I have.
Al, have you ever sent anything into Sky and Tell?
No, I haven't really done any imaging for a couple of years. Yeah.
Well,
So, Al, you make a great point. Sorry, Ted.
go ahead.
You make a great point, Al. So one of the things that, again, I said that I struggled with Photoshop in post-production. And one of the things that I have grown to appreciate about Pixis Site is if I can share my screen one more time here.
Yes, let me stop
Go
sharing.
ahead. Yeah, you can do it.
So here is my screen of Pixis Site. And what you're seeing is this is the main imaging area, this empty space here. But on the right are all of the icons that I use in my icon set. And some of these, most of these were given to me by people who know what they're doing. And I made some tweaks and made it my own. But the beauty of Pixis Site is you get to do the same processes or comparable every time you do an image. And so I'm, before my processing focused on trial and error, I would take a step. If I liked it, I'd keep it. If I didn't, I'd back up a step. And, it would take hours to process an image, 10, 12 hours just to do the post-production. Whereas now I know that I'm going to do most of these steps in this order. And at the end of the day, I'm going to have something that I'm proud to display. And that's one of the most powerful advantages of Pixis Site from an astro imager perspective.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge and letting us listen into the pros, because you definitely are the pros compared to us. And yes, Lydell, once you make Sky and Tell, yeah, you're a pro. You can consider yourself that astrophotographer that you wanted to be. But thanks, gentlemen, for doing that for us. Anything else you guys want to add? Because we have a couple more segments we can do. You okay?
All I wanted to say is I know, and it's, Lydell and I, it seems like we have great images, but, both of us started from literally square one. Both of us started with a DSLR with a blurry image, and both of that, I mean, for me, especially a blurry image, that my first blurry image was the inspiration for the rest of the hobby. So, just because you don't get a picture like what Lydell has or what I have, it took me, even my Andromeda picture, it took me 3 tries with the same data to get it to look at what it looks like today. So there's no reason to get discouraged by not getting the image that you see someone else has. It's not always going to be like what someone else has. It's a process. It's learning. There's a huge learning curve, but it's a fun learning curve, and it's a very supportive learning curve with everybody in it.
Absolutely, it's such a close-knit community, and 99% of the people you're going to meet, they're going to offer you great sound advice because they want you to do well. They want you to enjoy this hobby. I think we're stronger because of that community, and the time difference between that first version of the Leo triplet and the last version was 5 years. So it took me that long to get that kind of improvement where it was worth being recognized for. So keep going and ask questions.
Go ahead. Who had the question? Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, just keep going and ask questions whenever you can.
Okay. Well, thanks, gentlemen. It's amazing. I wanted to thank you for the whole society, because you allow a whole bunch of us sitting here to kind of tap in on what you're doing. And hopefully when other people see this, it'll inspire them to do more also. It'll keep them in that direction. Rue, good luck in getting your house with observatory. And I think Al had a good idea. We should market a house that is an observatory, something of a plan that does that. Could be kind of neat. Well, anyhow, thanks, gentlemen, for that. We have a couple of things we'd like to do tonight. Before I turn off our YouTube feed, what I want to do is share a screen here for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us to the Rittenhouse website. A lot of you don't realize that we've put a lot of work on this, and it's a brand new website. So let me see if I can pull it up in here. If you don't know, we have a couple ways. If you tap on the top, this is the main page that you all land on. But what we do is we have our events listed down here. And I wanted to call your attention. This is tonight's event right here. But you guys will be the first ones to know this. Well, I've actually told a couple people privately. But if you scroll all the way down and you look into the future, our Wyoming High Country Lodge trip this year, our astronomy excursion was a success. How do you know? Well, we're invited back next year. And it's going to be our 6th year out there at the lodge working on some amazing dark skies. Maybe I can influence some of you and get you to come out here with us. But what you can also do, and I've had a lot of people ask me this, they had said, I'd like to drive out there too. And some people were saying, can you take some notes along the way? So if you go into the astronomy blog session, this is the first time I did a whole blog on this one. If you go all the way down to the bottom, that's where it starts out. This gives you a little bit of an idea of why we're out there and what Medicine Wheel is all about. This is me getting ready to go out west, a little bit of a joke there. And these are all the spots that I started to stop at as I went on my way. One of the things I'd like to do is go back to Midland, South Dakota. It's the middle of nowhere. It's the middle of South Dakota, and darkest skies, absolutely ink black out there. What you're looking at is a picture of the downtown area, and you can see I'm the only car that's right there. This is what it's like when we're out at the lodge at night. We keep fires burning there. We put the telescopes out there, and we do an excursion to an amazing site that if you don't know about this, do a little research on it, Medicine Wheel. In fact, if you don't know about it, we're going to have a guest speaker who was with us at the lodge do our December meeting, give us a little bit of light about what this Medicine Wheel is all about. So if you want to know how you do it, you want to see a lot of pictures. In fact, here you go. I think I did it on this one. I put a lot of lodge pictures in there, put some camping sites in that I wanted to also. So if you want to take a look at what it's all about, this is one way that you can kind of enjoy or get an idea of what it's like too. I'll remind everybody before I turn off the YouTube feed, it is COVID and we are a business. Nonprofit means we have bills to pay. So if you like what you see and you want to keep us going, right at the top of our website is the donate to RAS button. You don't have to be a member to donate. You can just donate money to us if you'd like. Hey, $5 for tonight, that would actually help, or when you come to one of our events also. And if you notice, we're coming to the very end of our astronomy season out here at Muddy Run Park. So what I've been doing is I've actually been setting up some observing opportunities for folks. So if you see an observing opportunity notice, just know that that's only for members and volunteers. We're not doing this. We're not open to the public. The observatory is not open at this point to the public. Members and volunteers, there's a bunch of COVID regulations and you can see them on the website there too if you tend to come out here. We're going to try this again this Saturday. We'll be out at Muddy Run on Saturday night, and I'm opening it up to our membership and our volunteers. It looks like it's going to clear Saturday night, so maybe you want to bring your gear out. Out at the park at Muddy Run, we're able to see the Milky Way about 70% across the sky on a nice clear night. So I've got some other people along here with us, and I'd like to turn it over next to our mistress of the universe. Denise, are you out there somewhere floating around in the cosmos?
I'm here.
Okay.
Vulcan salute.
Denise does a talk with us on Planet Report. Denise, take it away.
All right. Well, blah, 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 Jupiter, blah, 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 Saturn, Venus, Mercury's coming up in the morning. So I thought I'd do something different. Yeah, the moon's going to be moving past Jupiter and Saturn. That's going to look beautiful. All of us on here know what planets to look for. So I thought I'd do something a little different. I would give us 4.5 minutes to relax and watch some really beautiful images, since it's all about the images tonight, of the moon with the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's to Claire de Lune, and I thought I would do a little early celebration for this Saturday, International Observe the Moon Night. So I'm going to share my screen. Everybody turn your speakers on. Make sure you have full screen going. I did not pick the highest resolution because it was like 25 gigabytes and I didn't know how that would share. So I picked the middle of the road one. We'll see what happens. I want to make sure we have music. So let's sit back, relax, and enjoy a little bit of our moon. So here we go. Let's make it full screen. View, enter full screen. Hopefully everyone can see it and hear it.
Look great, and we can hear it. Nice.
And there it is.
Nice.
Beautiful, Denise. I could watch that all day long.
And you can, because it's on YouTube, it's on NASA's channel, it's public domain, so you can show it anywhere you want. It's just beautiful, and the images just are mouth-watering. Yeah, hopefully you can get out and observe the moon at some point. We have a cross-quarter day coming up the end of the month. Halloween is the midpoint of the season. Halloween, probably the most familiar cross-quarter day. So not just a night to get dressed up like a werewolf, but also a night to celebrate the midpoint of the season, an astronomical holiday. So Mercury is going to be getting a little higher in the morning skies. You know, we still got Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So just about all the visual planets are able to be seen right now. So enjoy, everybody. I hope we get some clear skies.
Great idea, Denise. And we watched it on a big screen here. Beautiful. You picked the right resolution. Looks stunning. Cool.
Great.
Thank you so much.
You can download super high res images of that. Yeah, just
and so timely.
Watch it again. It's so relaxing and so pretty.
And so timely for the Observe the Moon night coming up on Saturday. Let me throw it over to Dave Walker right now. Dave's our gentleman who does our rocket talk, our rocket science talk. Dave, you out there? You want to take it over? I'll make sure you can share your screen.
I'm out here and ready to share.
Hold on, give me a second. I'm looking for you.
All I have to do is hit share screen. I've got the green button.
You got it. Go for it. Not seeing anything yet.
Oh, hang on. I'm not on my starter slide. Much better.
Coming through. We're seeing it.
We are now 2 weeks into October, and October 4th is the start of World Space Week, celebrating the kickoff of Sputnik 1 in 1954. And that's a well-known and well-done topic. I'm just going to cover a few of the highlights from this week. The Starliner's crew, the Boeing Starliner, has been sidelined because of sticky attitude control valves. So two of the rookie astronauts, Nicole Mann and Josh Cassata, who were originally scheduled for the first two Starliner missions, have been moved to a future Crew Dragon mission so that they can get spaceflight experience and preparing them for, hopefully, a lunar trip sometime in our lifetime. In better news, and speaking of Jupiter, they're getting ready to launch Lucy on the booster that would have carried one of the test Starliners up, an Atlas V Formulation 401. 4 meter fairing, no solid boosters, and one upper stage. Lucy is going to be assigned to explore some of these asteroids that are in Jupiter's orbit at Lagrange point 4 and 5. These are what are called in the family Trojan asteroids. They're not part of the asteroid belt. They share Jupiter's orbit. It's named after, unlike some of the others like Juno, which is some complicated acronym, Lucy actually is named after someone. An Australopithecus that was found in Africa in 1974 and is believed to be the most complete, oldest proto-modern human ever found. And interestingly enough, because Lucy's passing by the asteroid belt, it is going to visit an asteroid named Donald Johnson, who was the archaeologist who discovered Lucy's bones. The launch window for Lucy opens on this Saturday, so fingers crossed for good weather in Florida. Another interesting bit of trivia among this is a solar-powered flight, by the way. It's going to have special motors that will flip the solar panels no matter which way the probe is positioned to get a better look at, to keep it powered while it's getting a good look at up to 8, maybe more of these asteroids during its 12-year mission. One of the devices aboard is a high-resolution infrared camera that has to use a compressed carbon crystal as the lens. So yes, in case you're wondering, There will be a diamond in the sky with Lucy. You got me started. It's too late. Now the big news, which ironically, right after I did my human flight report last time, Denise cued me into a very special space flight coming up. This morning at about 10 o'clock on 13 October 2020, 4 passengers flew to 106 kilometers above the Earth, passing the Von Karman line, clearly in space. And these 4 passengers on the Blue Origin ship RSS First Step were Chris, I'm probably going to butcher the name, Bauschweizen, Audrey Powers, Glenn DeVries, and of course, William Shatner. This is the 4th flight of First Step and the 2nd flight to carry a crew. The first flight was the crew carrying the first test crew up. This flight means that William Shatner at age 90 is now the oldest human being to technically fly into space, beating out Wally Funk, who flew back in July, who's only a spry 82 years old.
Wow.
Just in case you're wondering, William Shatner is not the first Star Trek actor to fly into space. That was done by Mae Jemison, who was on the Space Shuttle Endeavour back in 1992, and eventually landed a role as a transporter room tech on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Nice.
During the 10-minute flight, yep, someone had a question?
I just said nice.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of
I'm
cool
still
stuff
on
in the
Lucy
background.
slide. I don't know if anybody else, is it my computer or?
No,
There we
I
go.
misthumbed it. So they were going to take off to the Great White Northerner. Bill Shatner, in case you didn't know, is from Canada, although I think he's a US resident now. So here we have a beautiful shot of the spacecraft taking off into the clear blue Texas sky. The flight lasted about 10 minutes, during which the passengers experienced about 4 minutes of weightlessness, where they got to take in a view of the Earth, experience free fall, and catch a view of things out the window. When it got back to Earth, everyone was anxious about the well-being of the passengers aboard the craft. And when they opened the capsule, William Shatner proudly came out in a pair. But actually, they landed quite safely. William Shatner is seen here being greeted. He's the one in the second closest to the rocket in the black baseball cap, with Jeff Bezos there on the left. This is shortly after landing. William Shatner gave a, I'll admit, kind of rambling but very heartfelt speech on what it was like to fly up into space, and you can catch it in the reruns. So after they get to do all their congratulations and hang out, the only thing left for the ground crew to do is scrape the Klingons off the starboard bow. And this is Dave Walker, Secretary of the Rittenhouse Society, signing off for this month's Rocket Report.
Hey, thanks, Dave. That's great. I like the humor too on this one. Well, I'll finish out everybody tonight. I'm going to share my screen here too, because it's fall sky, and it's a good time to catch some galaxies out there too. Well, let me try this. And the software that I'm going to use is Sky Safari. And you know it's fall when you see the Great Square of Pegasus. The Great Square is just an asterism right there in the center. If you have a good clear sky, you can see most of the stars from the horse, but from a city sky, you'll probably just see the square. A lot of people know about Andromeda. Everybody in our club here knows about it. You know, you've gone out and looked at it. It's probably one of the very first things people photograph, and it's also one of the first things people look at. But I wanted to bring your attention to something else out there. You also know the Pinwheel Galaxy over here on this side. It's on the opposite side of Andromeda, but I want to call your attention to something new. I was playing around in the observatory and I was looking for new galaxies that might stand out pretty well. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with this one, but NGC 7331. Now, the best way to find this is to go from the star Markab, that's at the horse's mane right about there, and then go down to Sheet, and then see if you can't do about a third of that distance, and you got to make a little bit of a right turn to find NGC 331. The reason I wanted to bring this out for you is because we had this in the telescope at the observatory. It is a beautiful spiral galaxy. And maybe I can inspire some of our photographers to check this one out, because the core won't blow out as easily as Andromeda will when you're photographing it. I don't know if anyone's photographed. I can say that if we do this and it's clear on Saturday night, and if you come out here, this will be one of the targets that we'll put in the telescope for you. Still a little bit too hard to find Stefan's quintet. I've done it with the observatory telescope, but I can only find the 4 brightest ones. The 5th one's still hiding from view. So I'm waiting for that exceptionally dark night. And I'm talking visual to be able to see this through the scopes here at the observatory. So just a short one with you. Normally we talk about Andromeda and some of the galaxies that you see in the fall. And by the way, this one I might try too if you come out on Saturday, the blue snowball. It really picks up nice in a large telescope. Really looks like an anomaly up in the sky. And you can even see a little bit of an annulus to the blue snowball, a little bit of a center to it that has a bit of a different color than the outer side of the snowball itself. So again, these are kind of cool to take a look at. And fall is on display over top of us. But if you look over there towards the eastern sky, guess what? Winter's coming. Not west. Let's get over to the east sky. There you go. How can you tell winter's coming? Well, first off, the Pleiades cluster is up in the sky. It comes up in the fall like it does now, and it'll become more and more prominent. But take a look. I can see just a little bit of that winter triangle peeking up above, or the winter hexagon peeking up above the horizon there. So our winter sky is back upon us. That's about midnight on. That's when Orion's visible at that point. But enjoy your fall view and see if you can get a couple of the galaxies that we just talked about and add that new one to your list. NGC 7331. I'll bet you with a good scope, you'd be able to pick it out with averted vision in a suburban sky. So good luck with your viewing, everybody. And I'll come back to you guys here in just a second. Let me stop this. And I'd like to say thanks to everybody for our October event here this year. I didn't get back to Zoom here. Let's try it this way. There we are.
Hang on. I don't know if we can do this. Dan, are you still here with us?
Yes.
Can you share any of the pictures that you took on your phone?
Ooh, I do not have the. I do not have those prepared.
Okay. All right. Well, Dan's new iPhone took amazing pictures of the sky. That's all I gotta say.
Maybe I'll put them on a blog post on the website.
Yeah, that's yeah. I was actually going to suggest that yesterday. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Please do. That could be your fall report. Show us the pictures. He's showing us the pictures privately, but yeah, you should show them. And I guess we'll put a plug in for Apple right now. When Dan showed me, what is it, the iPhone 10?
13.
When Dan took his iPhone 13 out, holds up the sky, and takes a picture, you wouldn't believe the amount of stars you could pick out in that small phone. In fact,
and the Andromeda Galaxy, you could see it in the picture.
I think it's time for me to make an upgrade. It might be worth it just to be able to take some of those pictures. Yeah, right, Denise. He was able to pick out the Andromeda Galaxy with his phone, correct?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ted, I can share a couple if you want. I have some on mine. Sure. If you have time for it.
Yeah, no, we're okay.
You see if I can.
Which phone do you have, Rupesh?
13 Pro Max.
Okay. I just ordered one. I'm waiting for it to come.
Well, wait till you see these pictures, man.
You see it?
These are with your phone. Yeah, we see it.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
I took it to Cherry Springs. You can see Andromeda right there.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Right there.
Cutie.
Everybody can be an astrophotographer now.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
You can see the Milky Way right there, you know, with an iPhone.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You know? That's what I used to do with my digital camera. 30-second exposures here and there, or putting on the car. Now you can do
it's not perfect, but for a phone, you know, it's a good start.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
For a phone, it's worth everybody upgrading to get that type of camera. That's beautiful.
There you go. I'll stop it. Well, that's
Okay. And so Dan will put some of them on our website. Maybe he'll put it on the blog post there, and you can take a look at it also, everybody. Well, what a great night, everyone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say goodnight to our YouTube audience. I'm going to see if I can stop that right now. Stop the live stream. So for the worldwide audience, goodbye. You might not see this part. We try to cut out the ending every now and then, but stay tuned with us. We are always here on the second Wednesday of the month. And we have some amazing speakers coming up in November and December. So thanks everybody for